Being frugal is one of the most misinterpreted and misunderstood aspects of FIRE. I say that as someone that misunderstood what frugality was for a long time. Up until I got involved in the FIRE community and immersed myself in personal finance, I equated frugality with minimalism and even cheapness. In reality, being frugal is something that everyone should both understand and strive to integrate into their lives. In a nutshell, being frugal is not always buying the cheapest of something just because it does the job. Being frugal is spending money on something that provides the most value per dollar spent. Now, an immediate follow-up question is, how do you define the value of something such as a good, service, or donation? This is where things start to get subjective and ultimately requires some introspection on your part to determine how you value things. Let's take food, for example. For some, food is simply nourishment, and they just want to eat something quickly as long as it is, hopefully, decently healthy and quick to prepare. They place no value on exotic ingredients or culinary effort on more complex dishes. To them, a meal is just a meal, whether it is chicken or veggies or a Michelin-star tasting menu. These people will tend to spend very little on food every month compared to someone that places a lot of value on experiencing new foods and flavors. Now, the frugal way to accomplish this would be to cook the foods yourself as opposed to going out to eat at fancy restaurants. You can still treat yourself to a professionally cooked meal every now and then, but you accomplish the main objective, which is to eat delicious and varied foods. Right off the bat, we can see that the value can be very closely associated with happiness. If you place a lot of value on something, then by attaining it, in theory, it will bring you happiness. Another example can be clothes. Being frugal doesn't mean buying the cheapest clothing, because as studies have shown, buying the cheapest of something can often be far more expensive in the long run. The cheapest pair of shoes may only last 1 year, and you may end up having to buy a new pair year after year after year. Meanwhile, a more expensive pair might cost double, but it will last 5 years. Strictly on a per dollar basis, the more expensive shoes provide far better value, because after 5 years, you'll have spent less than half of what you would have spent if you bought the cheap ones every year. Now, of course, we all have our own vices, and for some, it's fashion. They see immense value in having clothing made out of the best fabric and looking the best they can, as it improves their own self-image, and as a byproduct, they are generally happier. In today's age of extreme materialism and social media, it can be very easy to get lost keeping up with the Joneses. Someone always has the newest iPhone or a bigger TV or a new car, and it's very easy to fall into a downward spiral of attributing happiness and self-worth to your material possessions. It actually happened to me, which is why I stopped using Instagram. The first step towards implementing frugality and being happy with it is by taking stock of all of your different expenditures. This is literally everything you spend your money on each month or each year. Food, housing, cars, vacation, tech, presents, clothing, and everything else you buy. You then go through each category and determine how much happiness it brings you. This won't be easy, as happiness is ultimately internal and non-quantifiable. What this means is that even if something makes you happy initially, eventually just becomes normal and doesn't really provide you much joy in the long run. For example, next time you go to buy an expensive piece of tech, ask yourself if you'd be any less happy if you had the slightly cheaper version or last year's model. You may find that you will be just as happy with the 55-inch TV instead of the 65-inch TV. Or you may find that the extra size was actually worth the money. Both of which are perfectly fine, as you don't need to justify your decisions to anyone but yourself. All that is important is that you are aware of why you are making that decision, and that it's for internal happiness and not to one-up your neighbors. One thing to keep in mind when making these self-assessments is the so-called hedonic treadmill. Without getting into too much detail, the hedonic treadmill is a psychological phenomenon that states that our happiness adapts to our surroundings. With the example above regarding TV sizes, perhaps that 65-inch TV will bring you joy initially because it's the biggest TV you ever owned, and watching movies on it is so great and it's cool to show off to your friends, but eventually it just becomes normal and you don't have feelings towards it either way. Now, if you had the 55-inch TV to begin with, maybe you wouldn't have had the initial response, but eventually you would get used to it and you'd be completely fine with it. In both cases, you're perfectly content with what you have after a little while, but in one scenario, you have more money that you saved and put into your retirement account. Another way of looking at it is by translating the cost into time. In the book Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin, we are taught to break down exactly how much our time is worth by taking our annual income and dividing it by all hours related to work. Basically, when you calculate exactly how much your time is worth, you can now translate cost into time. If you calculate that your time is worth $40 an hour, then an extra $200 for larger TV is worth 5 hours of your life. By looking at the cost of something in terms of time of your life, it switches your perspective. Every uber wealthy person will always talk about how time is the most important asset that they have because it's infinitely valuable to them and it's finite. This explains why they may spend exorbitant amounts of money on something that ultimately saves them time on something else. For the more average person, all this means is that you should focus on your ultimate goal, which, if you're watching this, is FIRE. Every dollar you save by spending frugally goes into your retirement account, which grows exponentially, bringing your retirement date that much closer to you. By determining what you truly value, you can work towards FIRE and are still living a satisfying life. Now, this is by no means an easy feat, nor is it something that you can do overnight. Instead, it'll be something that you should keep in the back of your mind while you're making various purchases day in, day out throughout your life. Look through your own home and find the things that you've bought on a whim and never used. Keep that in mind next time you're going out to the shops and something catches your eye. Ask yourself if you're really going to get any use out of that, and if it is really worth that time that it takes to earn it because of the money that it costs. As you can see, this is a far cry from minimalism, which teaches you to just have the bare necessities in life. Instead, it teaches you to spend your time and money on things that matter to you and to avoid all the noise. By having this deep grasp on both your finances and your spending, retirement will be much easier for you. No one wants to retire with what they think is enough, only to haphazardly keep spending their retirement fund on useless crap and have to start worrying about money when they've worked so hard not to have to work again. The point of being frugal isn't to live off of beans and toast in a cottage in the woods in order to save all of your money. You only get one life, and it's up to you to determine how you want to live it. Being frugal just means that you internally place value on everything you spend money on, and prioritize the things that bring you the most happiness and value. By determining what you value early on in your life, you can then basically leverage frugality into not only reaching FIRE faster, but also living a happy and fulfilling life. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for plenty more videos to come. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I will get to them as best I can. And until next time, see ya.